welcome to Lucca. So my name is Paola and I will be your guide today to take you around the city on a bike ride, and you will be with me and with my colleague
Antonella, that's me. So, welcome to Lucca, welcome to this little town surrounded by walls. We both hope to have a nice tour in the city to show you the magic of this little town that went across the centuries, keeping its beauty and keeping its Renaissance walls. Let's go!
Let's go, andiamo!
Nowadays they are only 12 meters high, and they are still protecting the historical center of the city. This side is very interesting because we can see the rampart of the walls. That was the typical technique of the walls in the 16th century, 16th and 17th century, because the art of war changed completely, and so the city had to defend itself from cannons, weapons, gunpowder and so on. So it was a pretty little different from the Middle Ages. But this area was also protected by the river Serchio. So it was not, the city decided not to rebuild the walls. And the walls that you can see over there, they are pretty different from the other kind of walls. They are made in stone and they are absolutely straight. They are the Middle Ages walls, built in the 13th century, finished at the end of the 13th century. So Lucca is a mix of different centuries all together, and it's possible to see this mix on the walls, but also in the city, and we will see it.
So we are on top of the walls, and definitely one of the spots that deserve to be, to stop and to have a look. It's what you can see behind me. So it's a palace which is called the Palazzo Fanner, and it's still nowadays a private palace, which means that the Fanner family lives in there. It's a palace that dates back the second half of the 1600s. It was built by a Lucchese family, by a local family. Instead, the Fanner family got here in the 1800s. So 2 centuries later, they were from Austria. Maybe you already understood that by the sound of the name. And Felix Fanner was a brewer. So he was a beer maker, a producer, and he thought that Lucca needed, some beer, a new kind of drink. So he came here with his know-how, and he rented not just the palace but also the garden, which instead was transformed into a beer garden. So Lucca was one of the first Italian cities to have a beer garden, and this is where still the family lives nowadays. They don't make beer anymore, unfortunately, but they are doctors. The palace can be visited because it's a museum. Very often they host events, parties, weddings, and a few years ago a Michelin star restaurant opened in the lemon storage house, because at the moment the lemon trees are still inside because it's the beginning of spring, but probably in a couple of weeks they've got hundreds of lemon pots. They will be outside, and so there'll be more space in the restaurant.
The Botanical Garden was started at the beginning of the 19th century. In the year 2020, it was 200th year from the beginning of this beautiful story. There are a lot of nice and old trees in the garden, like for example ginkgo biloba or beautiful cedars, pines, and trees coming from the east and the west side of the world. One beautiful tree coming from the States is this beautiful bald cypress. It uses to live in the water, so that's why it's in the center of this beautiful little lake. And this little lake is the main character of a legend, a very famous legend in Lucca, dedicated to a lady called Lucida Mansi. Lucida Mansi lived in the 17th century, and she was really beautiful, so beautiful that probably she wanted to live as an eternal beautiful lady, and she made an agreement with the devil. There was no Botox surgery in the 17th century, so she chose to agree with the devil for about 30 years of wonderful beauty. After 30 years, the devil arrived to get the soul of Lucida. That was the agreement. 30 years of beauty in change of her eternal soul. But Lucida, well, she didn't want to give her soul. She changed her mind, and so she tried to escape from the grab of the devil, but the devil succeeded in getting her, and he put her in a carriage, and after a complete route on the walls, they finally went into the lake. Well, actually, this is not the end of the legend, because in the 17th century the Botanical Garden didn't exist, but who cares?
Okay, so there we are just in front of the cathedral, so the main church, the most important church in Lucca, what the Italian usually call the Duomo. This one in particular, it's dedicated to Saint Martin. You can recognize him, it's that man riding a horse, and at the same time he's cutting the mantle to give it to the beggar. The Church of Saint Martin was founded in the 6th century after Christ, and it's a typical Romanesque Pisan Lucchese church. So the decoration reminds us when Lucca was an important producer of silk. As you can see, all these patterns, the geometry, the animals, real or fantastical animals, were all embroidered on the silk that Lucca produced and exported, sold all around Europe. That's how the city in the past could be such a wealthy city and independent. That's why it was an independent republic. Inside the cathedral there are two important works of art. In case you'll manage to come here, you definitely have to see. One, it's a crucifix. It's a wooden crucifix called Il Volto Santo, so the Holy Face. It's a relic, and according to the legend, let's say to the story, it's the first image, something like a real portrait of Jesus Christ. And then in the sacristy, what you can admire, it's a funeral monument of a beautiful lady called Ilaria del Carretto. It's a masterpiece of the Italian art history. As you can see, on one of the pillars of the cathedral, there's a labyrinth or a maze engraved. This is quite an important symbol, as in the past, especially in the medieval time, pilgrims came to Lucca to admire and to pray in front of the holy face of the crucifix I was explaining before. And this was a reminder for them that they had to keep their faith. So, as you know, the labyrinth means life, or anyway, the pilgrimage that they were doing. And so they had to follow the thread, they had to follow the faith. Only in that way they will find the way out. So it was a suggestion, it was an encouragement somehow, so to keep faith in God and in the Church.
After the year 1000 in the Middle Ages, Lucca was very famous because of the production of fabric, silk fabric mostly, and also because it had the right to coin its own coins. It was a very important right in the Middle Ages. The city had the control on the production of coins. And a lot of cities, like Pisa, for example, used to make fake coins, very, very similar to the Lucca's ones. And it was very difficult to find the fake producer. And there were a lot of people changing money in Lucca for people coming from outside the walls, because they had different coins. So there was a moment in which the money changer had to swear they were very honest people. And this beautiful inscription of the 1111 says that money changers are allowed to change money, but they had to swear they won't cheat, they won't give fake money, and they won't steal money. And you can find these words here, more or less. For example, nec furtum facient, they don't steal. Nec treccamentum, they don't trick. Nec falsi, they don't cheat. So they were very honest people, and they were allowed to give true coins to the people arriving in Lucca.
Another interesting decoration that you can see under the portico of the cathedral, it's definitely this one up here. Down there's a writing which is in Latin, but probably you can already guess what it's represented. This is sort of like a calendar, so there are the 12 months of the year. So starting from my right hand side, you can see December, November, October, September, August and July. The other 6 are on the other side. Anyway, for each month there's, as you can see, a man which is busy doing something, so he's working, because the message of the church was you have to keep yourself busy, you have to work if you want to elevate your soul, if you want to be in contact with God. And for each month there's an activity connected. As you can see, September and October are the months dedicated to the wine production. So the man, he's pressing the grape, he's pushing the grapes with his feet, and in October instead he's pouring the wine into the barrel. November is plowing the field, and then finally December, it's when, you know, according to the tradition, people usually kill pigs to then make all the cold cuts and have meat for the winter.
Have you seen such a strange kind of shop? Well, it was a Farmachia, that's the Italian word for chemist, but now it's a pastry shop. A couple of years ago it changed its business and it became a pastry shop, but it couldn't change the shop window and the name of the shop. By the law in Italy, past is protected. Our architecture of the past century is protected by the law. That's to say, we cannot change anything outside. That's why the shop is like this. Inside, so you can see the original floors, for example, or furniture, and also downstairs, anything can be changed. And well, actually, it's a pastry shop. It was a Farmachia, but well, I think that chocolate is a good medicine too.
The VIP of Lucca, the most famous Lucchese in the world. Exactly, Giacomo Puccini, which I hope you all know, the famous opera composer, was born in Lucca, precisely in 1858. This is his hometown, and nowadays there's also a museum dedicated to him. It's exactly the house where he was born, and it's nearby these cute little squares. So Giacomo was born in a family of musicians. His father was a musician, his grandfather, his great-grandfather. For 5 generations, they've all had to deal with music. But Giacomo, anyway, he spent only the first part of his life here in Lucca, his childhood, until he was 18 years old. Once he got his diploma of music, he wanted to have a chance. So anyway, he thought that he deserved one, and so he went to Milan, where he took part to, let's say, a challenge which he didn't win, but anyway, he was noticed. And that's how his career started. That's one of the reasons why also Lucca is a city of music. So anytime you come, there's a concert, there's an opera. Anyway, there are concerts, so there's an important festival called Lucca Summer Festival, which takes place in July in one of the squares in the city. And then you can go every night in a church to listen to Puccini opera. And he was born to be up here on the 2nd floor of this red brick building, where you can find the piano where he composed the Turandot, but also many of his objects, letters and photos and a coat, paintings and so on. Here we are in the main piazza, in the central square of Lucca. This is exactly the heart of the city, and it's called San Michele Square, so Piazza San Michele, because this is the church of Saint Michael. You can recognize the archangel up on top, at the very top of the church, that it's Saint Michael, which is represented while he's killing a sort of dragon snake, and next to him there are 2 angels playing a trumpet to celebrate St. Michael's victory. This church, it probably looks to you very similar to the cathedral, because this is exactly, as I was saying, the style of Lucca. Again, here you can find the facade fully decorated with animals, flowers, stars, geometric patterns, because this was the medieval Romanesque Lucchese style. While at the bottom, as you can see, it's more geometrical. The half-round arches, the rhombus, this is instead, it's influenced by the Pisan architecture. And it can be quite confused because it's very similar to the cathedral and because it's in the main piazza, but this is just a church. I was saying that this is the main piazza also because in the past, when Lucca was founded by the Romans, this was the forum, so where the 2 main streets meet. It's a crossroad, and even nowadays when we wanna, meet a friend or get together, we meet in this piazza. So we needed a break from the bike ride, and so we thought to stop for a slice of pizza in one of the most famous pizzeria of the city, which is called Zbraja, thanks to the brothers Alessandro and Giorgio. And so they like to say to you, so nice to meet you, and in case you'll come to our city, don't miss their pizza. But not just pizza, because here what you can find, for example, it's another traditional food, which is gnocchi, and it's something that you can find just here in Tuscany, and it's made with chestnut flour. So it's more winter, fall kind of food, and it's filled with ricotta cheese. What you can find, it's not just pizza, but even something else that it's very typical again of Tuscany, and it's cecina. So it's this round chickpea sort of crepe pancake. It's really difficult to describe the texture because it can be very soft and crispy at the top, so there's a very nice crust. The main ingredients are the chickpeas, so the chickpea flour, which is mixed then with water, extra virgin olive oil, salt and pepper, nothing else. So it's very good for vegetarian, vegan people because it's friendly. And then you need a very good fired wood oven where you can bake the cecina, or even you can make it at home. Something else which instead it's again typical of the winter season, it's the castagnaccio. So it's a cake made with the chestnut flour, pine nuts, rosemary and walnuts, and then you can add whatever you like. Alessandro was suggesting me even some orange zest, so some orange peel skin. It's very nice, so it's a very good match.
At my back, the church dedicated to San Frediano. This is a very old church, pretty ancient, and the first one was built in the 6th century by Frediano. Frediano was an Irish pilgrim, probably he arrived from Ireland, and his name was maybe Finian. He built the church, he dedicated the church to San Vincenzo, and he also built more churches, about 28 churches, including the cathedral, the nowadays Cathedral of Lucca. The church you look now at was rebuilt after the year 1000, and then there were a lot of additions. The most important, the most precious thing that you can see is the mosaic decorating the facade of the church. It's a very simple church, the style is Romanesque, and it has very few decoration, but the mosaic with a beautiful Cristo Pantocratore, the apostles and angels on a gold surface. Inside the church is pretty bizarre because there are a lot of private chapels decorated in very different ways because each family decided the style and the decoration of the chapel itself. So it's a must-see in Lucca. Here we are at the entrance of Torreguini, Guinigi Tower. Guinigi is the name of a very important family in Lucca at the beginning of the 15th century. Paolo Guinigi became the Lord of Lucca and he ruled the city for about 30 years. And well, his family was absolutely rich, one of the richest families in Lucca, and they had an enormous power in business and of course in politics. The tower nowadays is open for visit. There are 230 steps to get to the top, and on the top there is a kind of garden. Well, actually it's not a garden, but there are some trees, olm oak trees, 7 olm oak trees on the very top of the tower. We don't know why there are trees on the top, maybe because they wanted to celebrate the origin of the family, or it was just a symbol of the family. Who knows? We haven't found any paper about the reason why they put trees on the top. And the view, the panorama from the top of the tower is really, really beautiful. You can see a lot of red roofed houses, typical in Tuscany, and you can see how the city goes on every side, because we are in the very, very center of the city now. The tower is attached to the Palazzo Guinigi, that's to say the humble house of the family Guinigi. That's a block. So the family was absolutely rich, and we can understand also because of the size of the building itself, in a style that we call Gothic, International Gothic. And in the centuries there were new additions, like the windows, like the seats where I am, and so this is a modern palace now, to be open as a city museum in the future. Crossing finger. So Paola, finally we finished our tour in Lucca.
Yeah, it was a nice bike ride.
Yes, it was, with a lot of good company.
So I think now that we deserve something to drink and to eat, because we spent some energy, so
Absolutely.
a little bit of a break. And what would you suggest?
Well, of course, coffee. We Italian, we do like coffee a lot. We have, a lot of Italians have a lot of coffee every day. Not me, I just have about 2-3 per day. That's enough for me. We also have cappuccino, but cappuccino, remember, in Italy, you're not allowed to ask cappuccino after 11:30 in the morning. So be careful, be careful. It's a very ancient tradition. We don't have cappuccino later than 11:30 in the morning. So cappuccino, coffee, and we have a couple of interesting cakes, we can say. Do you know them?
Yeah, sure. These are the cakes that are typical of Lucca, and one in particular you can find it just in this time of the year, so just right before Easter. That is the ramerino. So it's a bread, it's a sweet bread, and the ingredients are raisin and rosemary, like this. So it's not extremely sweet, it's a little bit probably like savory and quite crunchy. And then instead the other cake that you can find all year round, and as you know, probably a marketing advertising ad used to say, you can't say you have been to Lucca if you haven't tasted the buccellato. Buccellato is this cake over here, and it's again a bread, sweet bread, and the ingredients are raisin and in this case anise seed. So it's similar to licorice, so it had that strong taste, which is quite unusual nowadays in the cuisine, but in the past it was very often used. We eat buccellato, as I said, all year round, so it's not a very heavy cake, and it's quite nice to have it toasted or like this fresh.
Yeah, and it's very, very good with coffee, because anise and coffee, it's a good marriage, isn't it? And about the place where we are in a moment when camellias are blossoming, and here you can see a couple of varieties of camellias with beautiful bizarre flowers. We picked some of them from the garden, and it's a very magic moment in March in Lucca ECIR, that's to say in Lucca and in the surroundings of Lucca. Camellia arrived here probably in the 17th century, and that's why we have some trees of camellias in the city and in the surroundings. Camellia, some varieties of camellia, they also are used to produce tea, and in a little town close to Lucca we have the only farm producing local tea coming from the leaves of camellia, of course. So we have to enjoy tea, coffee, camellias, buccellato, ramerino as possible as we can.
So here we are. We'd like to end this tour where probably everything began, because we are in one of the most ancient places of the city. This around me, it's called the Piazza Amphitheatre, so the amphitheater square, because when Lucca was founded by the Romans, they built even an amphitheater, so the place for gladiators fight, that then throughout the years has been changed, has been transformed, and today it's used as a square, as a piazza with bars, restaurants, and even apartments above. So I hope you enjoyed this bike tour of the city. Thanks from my side, Paola.
And from me too, Antonella. I just say you goodbye, and hope to see you here again in Lucca, in one of the most beautiful places and squares that we have in Lucca, to have a coffee, of course, to have a drink, an aperitivo, maybe a spritz, and to enjoy the beautiful dolce vita in Lucca, Italy. See you soon!